First of all, I want to applaud the EU regulators for coming out with MiCA. It gave clarity on how to operate in the EU. What's challenging in the EU at this point in time is different countries have different grandfathering periods, probably have different standards and interpretation of how to administer MiCA. So that is what is challenging in EU now. I'm not quite sure what's the details in Romania, but if you want to tax individual transaction, it will create huge distortion. So that's something that we urge government to reconsider, because if you're not imposing those on other capital market transactions, be it on stocks, bonds, etc., why crypto? Because it creates an unlevel playing field, it creates distortion that's not needed. So crypto exists because it solves problems. And the only way it continues to exist and is being embraced, I mentioned, by the retail is because it has solved problems that fundamentally financial institutions have failed to solve.
Salutare antreprenori! Bun găsit la podcastul Idei și Antreprenori de pe Startup Cafe. Alături de comunitatea antreprenorială Startup Cafe l-am adus pe Richard Teng, CEO-ul Binance, cea mai mare platformă de tranzacționare cripto din lume. Richard Teng este alături de noi prin videoconferință. Thank you for this interview, Mr. Teng. Welcome to StartupCafe.ro. Binance is the leader of the crypto exchange market. Mr. Teng, what presence does Binance have in Romania? How large is the team here, and what tasks do they have here?
As an enterprise, we have about 6,000 staff globally, and we always go on the philosophy to try to recruit the best and the brightest, wherever they may be. We are now the most regulated exchange. We have about 22, 23 different jurisdictions where we're regulated, where we are required to have local presence, set up to meet regulatory requirements. But in many other places, we give our staff the flexibility to decide where to work from, right? So off the top of my head, I don't have those figures, but I'm sure we have Romanian colleagues. And based on my understanding, we have Romanian colleagues that's in customer service, because we do support Romanian language in terms of customer service on that front. So that is one of the competitive advantage that we have, right? A lot of people wants the flexibility to work from wherever they may be, work from home, work from destination that they want to be. And many people have requirements at home to take care of their parents, take care of their children. They have certain arrangements that they need to attend to. And the flexibility that we give to our staff, by giving them those flexibility, has become a key competitive advantage for ourselves to attract staff to join us globally.
In Romania, Ilie Pușcaș is your current country manager, and this year he received wider responsibility for the whole CE region. So what is the place of Romania in the CE region for Binance ecosystem?
We view every country as important, right? So we are a global platform, and really we see so many regions that's growing very fast. We see so many countries that's growing very, very fast, right? On that front. So different parts of Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, which explains the growth that we have seen in terms of numbers. And those numbers are very robust. We see very strong growth coming through. So what we try to do to have a successful local deployment is to make sure that, firstly, we work very closely with the policymakers, regulators, law enforcement agencies to understand what's the country priorities, right? And to work with the policymakers on that front. Secondly, is to really understand user needs. And we serve users from retail to all the way to institutions, right? So, and in every region, every jurisdiction, users will have different needs on that front. Institutions have specific needs that we try to cater to. Retail has, and even moving through regions, the needs can be quite different. The preferences in terms of products and features will be quite different. So we have to cater to all the local needs and the regional needs for us to be successful. And that's what our local regional manager does very well, understanding local needs and meeting those needs, right? And thirdly is working with partners, right? Crypto is still at a very early stage of adoption. In any countries that we wish to make significant deployment, is working with banking partners, payment partners, vendors, merchants, etc., to really support crypto adoption and deployment. The more we can do that locally, the more successful we will be.
Mr. Teng, Binance had its global headquarters in Japan and then in Malta, and recently you considered the United Arab Emirates. Will it be Abu Dhabi or Dubai? But why UAE?
We have not announced our global headquarters, so I think I want to correct you on that statement just now, right? So we have never announced a global headquarters. We have announced some regional headquarters in the past, right, including Dubai, serving Middle East, North Asia region. Um, I've been living in the Middle East for more than 10 years now. Uh, so to me, this is if you look at Abu Dhabi, Dubai, UAE, Bahrain, for example, they are at the forefront of embracing innovation, right? So if you look at this region, it is very thoughtful. It is ahead of the curve. It embraces innovation. And when I was the CEO of Abu Dhabi Global Market way back in 2015 to 2021, we became one of the first in the world at that point in time to come up with regulations to try to regulate crypto in a comprehensive manner, right? So one of the first regulators in the world to do that. And that's way back in 2017, 2018, when most regulators are not even spending time trying to understand the industry. An institution was just brushing it aside as a passing fad, right? So 2024 has been a landmark year because we have seen a big institutional wave, first with the approval of ETF in the United States and then subsequently throughout different parts of the world. And with a lot of institutions that were skeptical of the industry in the past, from the likes of BlackRock, Charles Schwab's Fidelity, to now big believer and big supporter and pushing out crypto products to their users. I think we have seen a landmark shift. And of course, with the election of President Trump towards the end of last year, that gave a further boost to crypto. So US went through a period of what we call Operation Choke Point 2.0, where the crypto industry was under a lot of you know unnecessary pressure, unfair practices, and influence, to now administration that really try to embrace and support innovation and crypto instead of trying to stifle innovation, right? So we have seen a lot of changes since then, with US being the largest economy in the world, largest capital markets in the world embracing crypto, coming out with strategic asset reserve on crypto front and coming out with formulating clear regulations on that front. I think it forced a lot of countries to sit up. So we have today a lot of countries approaching us, wishing to set up their own strategic crypto reserves on that front. Countries trying to formulate their crypto regulations, and we are the most regulated crypto exchange globally. So we have a lot of experience on that front. So countries approach us. But we also have many institutions and firms looking to allocate crypto into their treasuries. They have approached, they have onboarded, they are having discussion with us. And we wish to support anyone, all of our stakeholders that wish to really embrace this industry. The more we can make this a vibrant industry, the better off everyone is.
From this point of view, how do you assess European regulations such as MiCA regulation and the entire framework? Do you feel threatened by overregulation, or on the contrary, do you believe that establishing a regulatory framework for crypto is beneficial actually?
Well, first of all, I want to applaud the EU regulators for coming out with MiCA. It gave clarity on how to operate in the EU. So I think this effort that's worth commending. Right, as an ex-regulator, I can tell you it's not easy, and EU coming together very quickly to come up with that framework ahead of some of the other major jurisdictions is an effort that is worth applauding. Right, so I want to commend the EU regulators on that front. For us, we want to work very closely with the EU regulators to make sure that we continue to operate and serve our users in EU. But as with all regulations, the first iteration tends to be slightly more conservative because the regulators will need to really understand how the industry works for them to get comfortable before they think of where are the levers they can try to shift around to reach a better outcome, right? So I suspect EU is going through that phase in the future. What's challenging in the EU at this point in time is different countries have different grandfathering periods, probably have different standards and interpretation of how to administer MiCA. So that is what is challenging in EU now. But I'm sure the European regulators will work together to solve all these issues.
In Romania, the Romanian authorities have recently drafted a national law for the implementation of the European framework. What do you think about these national regulations, including in Romania? For example, in Romania, they proposed 0.5% tax for crypto platforms on their revenues, actually. Did you follow these national regulations in the EU?
I'm afraid I've not followed the Romanian provisions that closely, right? So, but first of all, we applaud efforts by governments, by policymakers to come up with frameworks to give clarity on how these spaces are regulated, right? So, if you look at the crypto industry, it's still at a very early stage of development, right? Today, we have 7 to 8% adoption, and the next 10% will come very quickly because, firstly, uh, unlike any other asset class, crypto has been embraced by retail for the longest time, and the institution, high net worth individuals, corporates was not embracing it until probably last year, right? If you look at any other asset class from securities, bonds, treasuries, FX, it's always embraced by institutions, go down to treasuries, high net worth, and finally retail get access to it, right? So now that the reverse is happening, we see that huge institutional wave coming through. So the adoption phase will come through very quickly. Mass adoption will come through quickly. So the first 5% of early believers and early adopters probably doesn't need regular regulations for them to operate in this space. But as it goes mainstream, I think more and more of the user will require clearer regulations in terms of protection. So any point in time government wish to come up with clear rules and framework, those are something that we applaud and we are hugely supportive with. We will look at those provisions and give feedback on how to make them better in terms of supporting innovation on the one hand, and on the other hand, really managing the risks associated with this sector. On taxation, just some general principle, right? So in many instances, some of this individual taxation, especially, I'm not quite sure what's the details in Romania, but if you want to tax individual transaction, it will create huge distortion. So that's something that we urge government to reconsider, because if you're not imposing those on other capital market transactions, be it on stocks, bonds, etc., why crypto, right? Because it creates an unlevel playing field, it creates distortion that's not needed in this space, right? So we will urge government, if they really believe that in the future of technology and crypto is going to be, together with AIs, it is a technology that's going to change every economic sector in the world, and countries, the smartest country around the world, are all embracing these two technology, that it warrants that we need embracing policy to really support these two technologies and support their growth. They're drawing the best and brightest talent. They're drawing a lot of foreign direct investments. They aid in the company's economic growth. So it's much more important to support those innovations in a smart and calibrated fashion, instead of stifling them. And some of the taxation that you mentioned, I'm not quite sure in what form you take, but if it's an individual tax on transaction basis, it will create distortion in the marketplace.
So the proposal is not a tax on transactions, but a tax on the revenues of the platform, of the actual platforms that are registered in Romania.
So it's like a corporate tax.
Sort of, yeah.
If it's a corporate tax is fine. I think all companies will be subject to companies tax, corporation tax, corporate tax, right? I think those are fine.
But this is in addition, and it is only for administrative purposes. It's basically a tax that is paid for the service of the regulators of the Romanian SEC, for example.
Yeah, again, I don't have the details, so it's unfair for me to give a considered answer on that front. So I think it's best that we look at this seriously, and people that are greater expert than myself can give their considered views to the regulators and the government on that front.
The representatives of the National Bank of Romania, for example, have issued warnings about crypto. From time to time, they release such warnings. Like other national banks representatives in the world, Romanian officials have stated that crypto is not a reliable store of value, for example. Crypto is not a reliable means of transactions, for example. Some said that crypto is based mainly on speculation, and they even compared it with the Ponzi scheme. What is your answer for the representatives of the National Bank of Romania in this case?
Well, I will not respond directly, but let me say this. I've been involved in financial services for more than 31 years now. I started off as a central banker. Right? I started off with the Central Bank of Singapore. And since day one, since I'm in the financial services sector, central banks around the world and financial institutions were saying that we need to bring about greater financial inclusion, right? But even today, 1.4 billion people around the world are excluded from the financial services sector. Right? I've been to many places in the world where more than 80% of the population do not have access to the banking system, do not have access to the payment system. They have no access to proper store of wealth. And many of these people come and thank me for the Binance platform. Because to them, the only way they can make payment domestically is via crypto. The only way they can do cross-border remittance in a very cheap and efficient manner, much cheaper than what financial institutions charge, right, is via crypto. And the best store of wealth for them in the past 10 years has been in crypto, right? So if you're holding to many of those local currencies that's depreciated greatly because of hyperinflationary environment versus the G7 countries, it has depreciated against all these countries, whereas whether you're holding on to stablecoin or you're holding on to Bitcoin in general, they have appreciated greatly, right? So they are very, very thankful for us giving them that platform to facilitate, firstly, a great store of wealth. They are so much better compared to their peers. For facilitating transaction, otherwise they can't do, and facilitating cross-border transfer to their loved ones on an immediate basis. I mean, if you do a transfer through banks today to a different country, right, which is not in Europe, for instance, it probably take you 2 to 3 days. The fees they charge for a small amount denomination probably north of 10%, which is huge, right? So we launched Binance Pay about 2 years back, and we have done about 27 billion in terms of volume on Binance Pay. If you look at the fees that we charge, is minimal or close to zero, versus the fees many of these money transfer companies or financial institutions charge, anywhere between 6 to 15%, right? So by our estimate, we have helped our users on Binance Pay save more than $1.75 billion, and it's substantial. So crypto exists because it solves problems. And the only way it continues to exist and is being embraced, I mentioned, by the retail, is because it has solved problems that fundamentally financial institutions have failed to solve. So today, the financial institutions have realized the beauty of crypto. So if you look at whether it's Charles Schwab, Amazon, Walmart, Fidelity, all of them are trying to launch their stablecoin. Because if you look at the financial infrastructure in the world today, they are built many years ago. It's a network, and it's very archaic by today. So if you reimagine the future, would you have built the financial infrastructure of the world, financial system in the fashion it is as it stands today? You wouldn't. With the usage of AI and blockchain, you can reimagine the future, which all these firms are, right? So once they realize the beauty of stablecoin, you have all these major institutions trying to embrace stablecoins now. So let me say that all these are very important use case of crypto, whether it's stablecoin, whether it's utility such as payment service provider, whether it's store of wealth. Bitcoin has been the best performing asset in 2024 and 2025. If you benchmark it against gold, S&P 500, NASDAQ, etc. So to anybody say that, it's not a proper store of wealth, just look at the data and the figures. It has outperforming all the other major asset class on that front.
Another criticism against cryptocurrencies is that they facilitate fraud, they say. Transactions involving money, drugs, and money laundering, for example. Binance founder himself, CZ, had an issue, a legal issue in the US with that. How do you respond to these challenges? How does the crypto industry as a whole respond?
So let me ask you this question, right? How many percent do you think that the total money laundering in the world, how many percent pass through crypto?
I don't know. I mean,
No, hazard a guess. You mentioned that is associated with money
let's say
laundering, etc.
1%. I don't know.
It's less than that. It's 0.0 something percent, right? So let me tell you why. Crypto is a traceable technology. Fiat currency is not traceable. Today you have 100 million in cash and you start distributing them. It's very difficult to trace out where you give those money to and where do you pass through. Whereas crypto, you can, I mean, I don't know whether you know enough, but you can do on-chain analysis. You can trace where those money go to. And we help governments, we help law enforcement agencies around the world to do that. I mean, in any given year, we have 65,000 requests from law enforcement agencies. This year alone, I've received many letters that commend us for our efforts to fight illicit crimes around the world. I received letters from the Singapore Police Force, Hong Kong Police Force, Thai Police Force, Indonesia Police Force, and the list goes on because we are active participants to fight financial crimes. But again, all these are things that people say without proper data analysis. If you look at data, and these are data coming out from US Financial Crime Office, in any given year, right, between 800 billion to 2 trillion is laundered through traditional financial system. Last year, the Singapore itself uncovered a very big Fujian gang that laundered more than 3 point something billion in Singapore, right? But if you look at the amount of laundering that takes place in crypto, it has been on the downtrend for the last few years because all of us are stepping up our efforts with law enforcement agencies. So if you look at coming out from Chainalysis, right, last year probably, I can't remember the figure offhand, it's probably 40 billion or less, right? So if you look at the percentage, 40 billion versus 2 trillion, right, it's a very small percentage. And we have the ability to track those. We freeze those funds. We work with law enforcement agencies to make sure that we bring perpetrators to task, right? So we have pushed out many articles of our law enforcement efforts around the world. And we actually conduct classes for law enforcement officers globally, police force globally, teaching them the technology. How do you use this technology to fight illicit crimes, to trace funds, right? So last year we have conducted 100 over classes, including some physical classes, and we have a lot of law enforcement agencies, policymakers, and regulators attend those classes. And we will continue to step up our efforts working with global regulators on that.
Now we see Bitcoin with a price above $100,000. Why does Bitcoin have value? Why do people give Bitcoin such value?
Well, I think if you think about it, Bitcoin is the most decentralized token, right? It's a peer-to-peer mechanism for payments that doesn't need to go through any intermediaries. And if you remember, the Bitcoin white paper came after the 2007 crash, the Lehman crisis crash, where people are disenfranchised with financial institutions, right? Why do financial crises keep happening in the traditional financial services world? And that gave birth to the concept and thinking of Bitcoin. If you look at the Bitcoin white paper, you'll know that it's limited in amount, unlike traditional fiat currencies where government can continue to print. It's not subject to tariff, it's neutral. There's limited supply on that front. It's not subject to debt ceiling discussion. So there are a lot of beauty around this, and it works 24/7. Anybody in the world can get access to it. So more and more, I think the narrative has become stronger that Bitcoin might be the currency that solve a lot of problems going forward, right? Because it's totally neutral on that front. But truth is, today, we do a lot of donations globally via Binance Charity to places that's undergoing tension, that's in trouble. And I can assure you that if you do it via traditional mode, it takes a long time for money to reach those destinations and to reach the people in needs, right? Sometimes it takes up to a month and a half. And those people, by the time those aid reach them, they are too late. But when we do it via crypto transaction, they receive the amount instantaneously, right? So in many of these troubled countries, for all this aid to reach these people, the fastest way is via crypto. Again, it goes back to the beauty of why crypto is being embraced by the retail and by many around the world, and why the resilience of Bitcoin has continued to grow. Now the institutions are embracing it. The largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock CEO Larry Finn, said that, look, institutions and corporates should allocate 2% of their reserve at least into crypto. I was in Davos earlier this year, and again, the mood has totally changed when you talk to many of the sovereign wealth funds. It's not whether they are going to allocate into crypto, it's how many percent they are going to allocate into crypto. And same for some of the major corporate treasuries around the world. So we are still in the very early days, which is why I'm bullish.
One question, please. One last question. In Romania, we have a Romanian startup, Multiverse X, formerly Elrond. I don't know if you heard about it. Is a leading crypto startup for our country. And they launched its own cryptocurrency, e-gold. 3 years ago, its price surpassed $500 per unit, but now it has dropped below $20 per unit. What do you think our cryptocurrency is missing, in your opinion?
I can't say for sure offhand, right? So I would say that, what is important is for projects to continue to be successful is to focus on building, focus on developing, and making sure they reward the community, continue to engage them quickly, continuously, continue to develop their projects in a way that will continue to be leading edge and cutting edge and bring much more new innovation, right? So how do you build a successful project on that front? Is to really focus on a few areas depending on what sort of projects it is. If it's a utility project, how do you enhance your utility? If it's a social fi, a pay fi, how do you continue to gain traction on those fronts and make sure that the features continue to improve and you're best in class? Yes, the users want to continue using you on that front. So the path to success is similar. I can't speak for any specific projects, but crypto is a very innovative space. There are new ideas, new projects coming through. And to be successful, many of the builders have to continue to be hungry and continue to push the frontier and continue to innovate and build the best product class out there.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Teng.
Thank you so much for your time.